Folk Tales. The 7 Kids. Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, there lived a mother goat. And the mother goat had 7 young kids. One day the mother goat said, "Now be careful, children, because I'm going to the meadow to bring you fresh grass to eat." "Don't worry, we'll be good," the little kids said. So the old mother goat set off for the meadow, and then she shouted back, "And don't let any strangers in, because I won't be back until evening." The wily wolf had been listening outside all this time. Well, he thought, I have my chance at long last. Hardly an hour had passed before the wily wolf went to the window and called into the kids. "Darling children, open the door because I have brought fresh grass for you to eat." The little kids laughed when they heard his gruff voice, "But our mother will only be back in the evening, and her voice is much sweeter than yours." The wolf was furious and ran away until he came to a field full of turnips. There he pulled up a turnip from the ground and ate it to make his mouth dry and his voice sweet. Then he hurried back to the house and called to the kids, "Darling children, open the door because I have brought you fresh grass to eat." And the little kids were about to open the door when the eldest looked out of the window and saw the wily wolf's bony black hand and shouted, "Don't open the door because our mother has white hands, not black." The wolf was furious for a second time. Then he thought for a moment and ran until he came to the village bakery. When he arrived, he asked the baker for a sack of flour to make his hands white, but the baker was busy kneading bread and asked him to wait. But the wily wolf was very impatient and could not wait a moment longer. "I'll be dining on goat meat tonight," and he hurried back to the house. By the time he arrived back, it was late in the day, and he put his hand up onto the windowsill. With his white hand and his sweet voice, the kids were convinced that their mother had returned from the meadow at last. Then the wolf shouted into the kids, "Darling children, open the door because I have brought you fresh grass to eat." And the silly kids jumped for joy because they had fresh grass at last. One kid hid under the bench, the second in the corn bin, the third in the ash bucket, the fourth in the wash basin. The 3 other kids stood petrified in the middle of the room. They were all so terrified that they would happily have hidden in a matchbox, but there was none in the house because their father did not smoke a pipe. Then the wily wolf pulled the kid out from under the bench, the kid out of the corn bin, the kid out of the ash bucket, but the clock door was so small that his long tongue wouldn't fit inside. "Oh, how full I am," he said, and stroked his fat belly. Then the wolf went out to the meadow where he lay under the mulberry tree and soon fell fast asleep. As evening fell, the mother goat returned home from the meadow and nearly died of shock when she saw the door wide open and her little house empty. She began to call, "Kiddie, kiddie, come here." She was sitting and crying when she suddenly heard a tiny voice speak, "Don't cry, mother dear, because I am here." Then the last of her kids appeared, who was delighted to see his mother, but even more delighted to see the fresh green grass. "And where are your brothers?" Then the little kid told his mother how the wily wolf had tricked them. "Oh," his mother said, "so that is who I saw resting in the meadow when I was walking home. Hurry, child, and fetch me a needle, thread, and a pair of sharp scissors." And while her son searched, the mother goat took a rest after a very tiring day indeed. They soon arrived at the meadow, where they saw that the wolf was still sleeping. "Gather rocks, quickly, quickly." Then the mother goat slit the wily wolf's belly open, and the other 6 kids leapt out. "Now let's teach the wily wolf a lesson," the mother goat said, "and fetch as many rocks as you can while he is still asleep." They soon collected a big pile of rocks and packed them into the wily wolf's belly before their old mother stitched it back up again. Then she told her kids to hurry back home because the wolf would surely be in a terrible mood when he awoke. So the 7 kids all ran back to the house and watched from the window to see the wolf awake. When the wily wolf awoke, he was very thirsty and he thought to himself, I shall go down to the stream and take a drink because the 6 kids in my belly must be really thirsty. The wily wolf struggled to his feet and he smiled to himself when he heard the rocks rumbling in his belly. When he got to the stream, he leant down to take a good drink, but the rocks in his belly were so heavy that he fell headfirst into the water and was washed clean away. The wolf floated on the water, and the stream passed right before the kids' house, and they laughed when they saw the wily wolf wash past. But the wolf could not swim and was drowned in the deep. And if that wily wolf had not drowned, my tale would have never ended. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Frog, the Mouse, and the Sausage. A long time ago, far, far away, there lived a little frog. And the frog met a mouse and a sausage. All 3 began to talk, and they decided to become best friends for life. The mouse did all the cleaning, the frog did all the shopping, and the sausage cooked all the food. And the 3 friends lived like this for a month and a day. The sausage cooked such delicious food that they were always left licking their lips. And no matter how much they ate, it was never enough because the food was so delicious. When the month was over, the sausage said, "We should really take turns, so who is going to cook the food instead of me?" "Why not the frog?" they said. So then they made the frog their cook. The frog tried this kind of dish, and that kind of dish, and that kind of dish, and this kind of dish, but he could never cook anything the others liked to eat. He carried on cooking for a couple of days, but then they asked him to stop. "You are a very bad cook, Frog," they told him. The frog felt very ashamed. "Well then, croak, who will do the cooking now?" So the sausage said, "We'll make it the mouse's job." So the mouse became the cook. And it cooked for a couple of days, but it cooked so badly that it asked the sausage, "Why don't you cook instead of us?" "Yes, croak, why don't you cook instead?" the frog asked. But the sausage could only say, "I had my turn of cooking, and if you don't want to cook, then we'll have to break this friendship up." But they begged and begged the sausage until it finally agreed to cook for a couple of days more. The frog thought it could learn to cook by watching the sausage. Well, when the soup was nearly done, the sausage pulled it aside, and when it thought nobody was looking, it jumped into the soup. croak. Now I know why the soup tastes so good, because the sausage always jumps into it first. Now I know how to cook. Then the frog offered to cook for them again. Now I will be the cook, croak. I know how to cook. So the frog put a big pot of water on the stove and made a big fire to get it good and hot. And it cooked it and cooked it. When it thought that the contents of the pot had cooked enough, the frog didn't wait for it to cool, but hopped right into the boiling hot soup. Well, the water was so terribly hot that it made the poor frog's skin all slimy and wrinkled, and that is where toads come from. Then the frog had to stop cooking because the hot soup had scalded it so. The mouse and the sausage laughed at the foolish frog when it told them the story, and they decided not to be friends any longer. So they all went their separate ways, and they all lived happily ever after. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Bear and the Cat. Many, many years ago, in a land far, far away, there lived a bear. And one day, the bear met a cat and said, "Let us work together, cat, and build a house." So the two of them worked together, and they built a house in the forest. When the autumn came, the leaves began to fall, and the bear said, "The winter will soon be here. Let us work together, cat, and collect some food." So the two of them bought a bucket, went deep into the forest, and filled the bucket with wild honey. Then they got a second bucket and filled it with fat, and carried the buckets up to the attic. The winter that came was a very bleak one indeed, with plenty of wind, lots of snow, and very cold days. So the bear lay down to go to sleep, while the cat watched over the fire and sat comfy in the warmth. But then the cat slowly became hungry and wondered how it could get out of the house so it could climb up into the attic to eat from the buckets of honey and fat. "Where are you going, cat?" "You will never believe me, but a mouse just came past and invited me to a baptism." "The mouse has just had a baby and says it wants me to be the baby's godfather." "Very well, then you had better go," said the bear. So then the cat sneaked up to the attic and ate a quarter of the honey and a quarter of the fat and sneaked back down again. "Oh, you're home from the baptism. What's the little one's name?" "A quarter." "How about that? I've never heard of a name like that." Time went by, and the cat got hungry again. "Hey, cat, where are you going?" "Well, you will never believe me, but another little mouse came by and invited me to another baptism." "Very well, then you had better go." "You're home again soon?" "That's right," said the cat. "And what's the little one's name?" "A half." After a few days, the cat got hungry again and quietly opened the door. "Where are you going, cat?" "You will never believe me, but I've been invited to another baptism. Another baby mouse was born, and I'm to be its godfather." "Very well, then you had better go."
So what's the little one's name?
Nothing.
Oh my, that's the strangest name of all.
When the spring came at last, the bear woke from its winter sleep, thin and hungry as it had not eaten since the autumn. But everything is fine because we have plenty of honey and fat in the attic. Cat, please fetch some and we'll make delicious pancakes with honey.
Go up to the attic, Cat, and fetch the 2 buckets down.
Oh, but I'm so dizzy. So very, very dizzy. And we all know that cats don't get dizzy, don't we? But the cat was pretending.
Very well, I'll go and get it myself,
said the bear. So the bear went up to the attic and found both buckets empty. I'm going to teach that bad cat a lesson. Cat, you ate everything up, and that is why you said a quarter, a half, and nothing. The cat denied the whole thing and said to the bear, let's make a test. We'll both lie in the sun for a while, and whoever ate the honey and the fat will sweat it out, and then we'll know. So they lay down in the sun, and the cat ran up to the attic and scraped what was left of the fat and the honey from the buckets and smeared it on the bear's fur. Then the bear woke up and looked at its sticky fur and said,
Oh dear, I must have eaten it all. But when did I do it?
When the cat saw the bear, it couldn't stop laughing. And it laughed, and it laughed, and it laughed, and it ran off into the forest. And the poor foolish bear lived unhappily ever after. Hungarian Folk Tales. Starving Matthias. Once upon a time, very far away, there lived a very poor man. He was as poor as could be and had nothing to his name. His name was Starving Matthias, for he had nothing to eat. One day Matthias made up his mind to go into the forest and hang himself. He looked hard at all the trees to see which one would be best for the job. And as he was busy doing this, the devil appeared before him and asked, "What are you looking for, Matthias?" "I'm looking for incense to smoke you out of hell." This frightened the devil so much that he promised to give Matthias anything he wanted. "Then give me 200 pounds of gold." And so the devil gave him what he wanted. Matthias returned home very contented. The devil also went home and told the other devils what had happened. The other devils told him that 200 pounds of gold was far too much and thought how best to get it back. Then one of the devils had a very simple idea. "I shall simply go and ask him to give it back." So the devil went to him and said, 200 pounds of gold is really far too much, so I suggest the strongest between us should take it as a prize. I challenge you to a fight. "I won't fight you, devil. I'll simply throw you to the ground so that you'll never get up again. But my grandfather is 188 years old and lives deep in the forest. You should go and fight him instead." So the devil and Matthias went to the forest, where Matthias told the devil to enter a cave. So the devil went in, and what do you think he found? A bear. But the devil didn't know it was a bear. The bear was lying on the ground, and so the devil woke it up. The bear was far stronger, but the devil managed to slip from the bear's grip and hurry away home again. Then the devils gathered for a second time to discuss how best to get the 200 pounds of gold back from Starving Matthias. Next, the fastest devil went to see Matthias. "Matthias, the 200 pounds of gold is far too much, so let's see which one of us can run faster, and he shall have the gold." I won't compete against you, because if I start running, I'll be so fast that I'll knock down the walls of hell. But I have a son called John who will run fast against you. Come with me to the forest, because that is where John takes his midday nap." Matthias knew exactly in which bush the rabbit hid. "Wake up, John, wake up and take a race against the devil." The rabbit heard this, jumped to its feet and began to run as fast as the wind. The devil gave chase. But by the time the devil reached the forest, there was no sign of the rabbit. Who would have thought that your son could have run so fast? And with that, the devil walked back to hell. The devils gathered again to discuss the matter, and then the strongest of them said, "This time I shall go and bring back the gold." So he went to see Matthias and said to him, "£200 of gold is far too much. The one to win the gold will be the one of us who can carry the horse 6 times around the yard and rest no more than 3 times in total." This challenge worried poor Matthias, because he knew the horse was far too heavy for him. Then he had a thought and said to the devil, "You do it first, and then I will follow you." So the devil lifted the horse and carried it around the yard 6 times, but by the time he was done, the devil was absolutely exhausted. Then Matthias said to the devil, "The way you lifted the horse and carried it around was really no great deed, and you even stopped to rest. Now I shall take the horse between my legs and take it 9 times around the yard without stopping, even once." When Matthias dismounted, he spoke to the devil and said, "You see, I am much stronger than you are. Although I took the horse between my legs, I had no need to take a rest." Defeated, this devil went home again. Once back, the devils discussed how they would regain the gold. At last, a devil stepped forth saying that he would bring back the gold. So off he went to see Matthias. £200 of gold is far too much, so the one of us who can scare the other more shall have the gold. We'll have you drink hot ink today." "I'll drink it. What if we harness you to a yoke and have you plough smouldering embers in hell?" "I'll do it if I must." "What if we put you in a steel pot and pour boiling lead on you?" "I'll bear it if I must." "Now I'll scare you." The devil realised that the man was much braver, and so he rushed back to hell and told the others, "Beware of starving Matthias. Let him have the £200 of gold rather than perish, because that Matthias is a bigger devil than all of us put together." But when he died, he was not let into heaven. Off you go to hell. That's where you belong. You were good friends with the devils down there. So off Matthias went to hell, but the devils would not let him in either. Then poor Matthias sat down outside heaven's door and sits there to this day. If you go to heaven, you are sure to see him still. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Prince Who Wanted to Live Forever. Once upon a time there was a prince. He told his father that he did not want to die. "You should know, son, that he who is born will also die." But the prince insisted that he did not want to die. "I'll go to Foreverland." "There's no such place, my son." "Yes, there is. I've heard of it." "Very well then, go." The prince prepared himself and wandered for many years until he came to a high mountain. He regarded the mountain and saw something at its very peak. It looked as small as a sparrow. Well, if he had come all this way, he simply had to find out what it was. It took him years to scale the mighty mountain. There he found a huge giant. He greeted the giant, and the giant returned his greeting. "What are you doing here, Prince?" "I'm looking for Foreverland. Could you tell me which way to go?" "Of course, you've arrived. Stay here with me because the Queen of Foreverland will send you here anyway." "I'd like to talk to the Queen myself. Please tell me which way to go from here." "There's a large forest over there. If you cross it, you'll find her." The prince went off to find the forest. There he came upon a magnificent palace. And there he found a kindly woman sewing in one of the rooms. "What are you looking for, Prince?" The Queen, of course. Well, don't go any further, because she will send you here anyway. Stay with me, and we can talk. But I wish to talk to the Queen herself. You cannot get in to see her, because you have to go through 3 iron gates, and each is guarded by 3 wild beasts. But if you don't want to stay here, I'll give you 3 bread buns. Should the animals attack you at the gates, give them a bun, and the iron gates will open. And so it all happened. When the 3rd iron gate opened up, the prince saw the Queen was standing in the middle of a courtyard. She asked the prince what had brought him to her palace. "I've come looking for you." "Then stay here with me." And the prince stayed. Time went by, and one day the prince said to the Queen, "Listen, I'd like to go home. I left my old parents behind, and I'd like to see how they are." The Queen laughed. "Being a prince has not made you any wiser. How many years do you think you've been here? 3 years? You've been here for 3,000 years, but I won't keep you from going if you really want to. I'll give you a pair of shoes. Take them with you. A man will attack you. Tell him you'll go with him, and then put on these shoes." So the prince set off, and he wandered and wandered until he reached a town. But the town was no longer the same as it had been. He asked a few people if they knew the king by such and such a name. No, nobody knew him. He asked the oldest looking man who was the oldest man in town. The man showed him the house where a 300-year-old man lived. The prince went to see him. "Do you remember my father, old man?" "Oh, my son, I've never even heard of him." As night fell, the prince found himself a room, made himself a bed out of hay, and went to sleep. In the morning, he woke up with a man standing right in front of him. "Hail, Prince! I've been looking for you for 3,000 years, and now I've found you. Come with me, because you ought to have died a long time ago." "Wait a minute, let me put on these shoes. Let's go out, and then I'll go with you." When the prince put on the shoes, they whizzed him away at once. Death rushed after him everywhere but failed to catch the prince. When the prince reached the walls of the Queen's palace, the Queen of Foreverland was standing there in the courtyard. She shouted to Death, "Don't you touch that man. I'll go out and take care of him. I'll throw him up high, and if he falls outside the walls, he'll be yours. But if he falls within the walls, he'll be mine." When the king threw the prince up high, Death danced and clapped, thinking that he was going to fall outside. But as it happened, he landed within the walls. The Queen then chased Death away, telling him never to return to her land again, otherwise he would surely die himself. So the prince stayed with the Queen, and they both lived happily ever after.